Mr. Park, you can turn the lights on in the back of the room if you'd like.
There they are. I didn't see anyone.
We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The governing board meeting called to order at 5 p.m. Can we all stand for the flag salute? Ready? Begin. Let it be noted that all governing board members are present. Do we have an approval agenda for the December 13th, 2021 board meeting? Do I have a motion to approve? Motion.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Furdos. Second by Ms. Castaneda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the approval of the November 29th regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you,
I'll
Ms.
second.
Castaneda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. The organizational meeting, annual election of officers for 2022. Director Miramontes.
Yeah, I'd like to turn that over to the board to elect their next president. And after that, the election for the clerk president pro temp, nomination for election of district representative, alternate for district representative, and then also the political action representative. So I'll throw it back to you guys to see if anyone would like to nominate for the election of president.
We have a motion to nominate and elect for president.
I'll make a motion to nominate Jerry Frutos.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0. Congratulations, Mr. Curtis. Nomination and election for the clerk president pro tem.
So like Rhodia Shed, Miss Rhodia Shed for.
Motion by Ms. Castaneda, second by Mr. Furdos. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Shed, for being the next pro temp. Nomination election for a district representative to serve to the nominating committee to elect members to serve on the Orange County Committee on School District Organizations.
I nominate Ahmad.
I second.
Don't sound like
That
your
was
voice,
quick.
y'all.
That was quick, Mrs. Castaneda. That was real quick.
Nominated by Ms. Shed, second by Ms. Castaneda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Ahmad, for serving that role. Nomination election for alternative district representative to serve on the nominating committee to elect members to serve on the Orange County Committee on School Organization. Motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Shed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Ms. Castaneda, thank you for filling in that role. And then nomination for an election for political action representative.
I nominate Jason. Sean, Mr. Jason.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And congratulations to me. Moving on to, nope. no,
This is
we-
when we take a reorganization. We'll come take a quick picture up here before we come up for Rhodia and Jerry. Actually, the new guidelines just came out today. All masks on. So, find your new seats, everybody. Grab your stuff and find your new seats.
It's like the first day of school. finally, was in this section.
Sanitizer.
Just so you all know, there's no rhyme or reason. You're just following your predecessor. So whoever your predecessor was, you're gonna start with Irene as the first president of this board. You're basically following that same seat where Irene goes. So you follow that, follow the leader, please. Thank you.
Everybody organized? Ready to go? Just before we get started, I just have a few little words here. I'm actually truly honored to be serving as your next Board of Education president. I really appreciate the confidence that everybody has in me to lead our district and our students in the best possible way. I also want to thank Mr. Chong. I'd like to take a moment to thank you for your leadership, your commitment to our students, staff, and community. And we appreciate your hard work and dedication throughout the 2021 school year. So thank you very much. I also want to congratulate Mr. Shed on being selected as clerk president pro tem.
Thank
So,
you.
and with that being said, we're going to move on to today's hearing session. The audience members may request to address the board on an offer item. The agenda per bylaws 9323. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the governing board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board limits the total time for public input to 20 minutes. The total amount allowed for public comments shall be 30 minutes. The audience members wishing to address the board during the hearing session of the agenda should fill out a request to address the governing board form and turn it into the executive assistant prior to the board holding the hearing session. And I do have one here. We have the sped teachers.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Susan Mercier. I'm an RSP teacher at Buena Park Middle School. I had the privilege of 2 months ago speaking with you regarding appreciation for Dr. Justin Sherrill. Tonight, we are sharing a letter regarding the collective concerns of many special education colleagues regarding the BPSD Special Education Department. Here presenting tonight are Kay Santos, mild moderate SDC teacher Corey, Laura Cruz, mild severe SDC teacher, Buena Park Middle School, Christy Shanbetz, speech language pathologist, Corey and Emery, and Annette Aylesworth, SLP, Buena Park Middle School. I'll start with the letter and then we'll each be taking a section. Dear Dr. Miramontes and Buena Park School District board members, many concerned staff members within the Buena Park Special Education Department would like the governing board to be aware of serious concerns regarding the leadership of our department. The lack of competent and supportive leadership has been negatively impacting our ability to perform our job in recent years. As a result of these issues, special education teachers, speech language pathologists, psychologists, and other staff members, including a long-term district nurse, have resigned or retired early, found positions in other school districts, are actively seeking other employment opportunities, or have gone on medical leave due to unnecessary stress. Some of us are currently seeking psychological and/or medical interventions to help manage the weight of unrealistic demands that have been placed on us during the past 4 years.
On October 26, 2021, many members of the special education staff, general education teachers, and members of the BPTA board met with Dr. Miramontes to express our concerns. Dr. Miramontes and Dr. Cantu have indicated that they are working on a resolution, including a special education action plan for systematic improvement, or SIPSI, which was sent to us on November 3rd, 2021. The SIPSI includes a reorganization of leadership duties within the SPED department at a district level, as well as an ongoing series of meetings with special education staff.
We are hopeful we are hopeful that we can work together with Dr. Miramontes and Dr. Cantu to further outline the challenges we face and work collaboratively to propose possible supports and solutions as we navigate the landscape of positive change while striving toward transitions of trust.
Please understand that our department is struggling greatly to maintain professional integrity, clear communication, safety precautions, the IEP team process, and education code compliance while best serving our students. However, as special education teachers, speech language pathologists, psychologists, and other support providers, we have been functioning under great duress in recent years. In addition, while we are happy that Dr. Sherrill, happy for Dr. Sherrill as he takes advantage of a positive career opportunity, we will miss his support, professionalism, integrity, knowledge of special education, and leadership.
We are sharing this letter with you at this time while being as transparent as possible. We are hopeful that the district and the governing board will help support positive changes with sincerely concerned BPSC special education staff. Thank you.
Nope, no other comments.
So we'll be moving on to board comments. We'll be starting off with Ms. Shad.
Thank you. Well, December 2nd and 4th, we had a school board conference, and there were so many workshops on how to improve or increase effectiveness with students, staff, family, and the community. And I found it very helpful. 12/7, I was one of the Christmas shoppers. The Lions Club made contributions for some of our students, and I was thankful to be able to contribute toward helping in that move. 12/9, I attended Assemblywoman Perksova holiday open house, and she was telling me about declining enrollment and how, especially during COVID, that we needed to be funded for enrollment as opposed to ADA. So I was so elated to hear that. Obviously, some educators have already spoken with her. And on 12/11, Trustee Ahmad and former Trustee Barbara had a warm and fun tribute to Sam Hamblin, and I was happy to be a part of that. It was so heartfelt. I really appreciated all the work that had been done, and his family and friends that were there. Later that afternoon, Ms. Castaneda and I went to the Carpenters Union. They gave away food and toys to some of our students. They reached out and asked who could they help with the Gilbert School. And so I was so excited about that because that's a new partnership for us. And I really appreciated their generosity, and our families were so appreciative. And I was so glad to be a part of helping that. And I wanted to also congratulate and thank President Chong for his work that he did throughout the year. And I have nothing more to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Ms. Castaneda.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great afternoon. I have quite a few things. Hopefully I don't forget anything or anyone. I did also attend the CSBA this year. It wasn't in person. I attended virtually, but it was still as informative and helpful.
lots of new information of how we can improve as our schools, through this whole time and pandemic, and also just how we can also bring outdoor, indoor learning, and lots of great information. I also did attend, visited Pendleton Elementary. That was a really great tour. Principal, they are doing an amazing job, amazing work there. Ms. Centeno was able to join us, Ms. Cantu, and President Barry Frutos was there too. And so just to walk around the classrooms and to see everything is really great, and just to see our students focused and engaged. And the one thing that I saw is just that how nonfiction is so popular at Pendleton. They love it. They can't get enough of it. They're reading it and they're just spitting out facts. And I'm so happy to see that they're reading and engaged. It's really great. I also do want to thank Ms. Darwa Ahmad and Ms. Barbara Michael for putting an amazing celebration of life for our former board member, Mr. Sam Hamblin. It was really touching. It was amazing. And just to be a part of it and just to hear stories of him. I experienced, and I was on the board with him and served, and he would tell me many stories, but just to hear childhood stories was really touching, and it was really great to see that. And so it was really great to celebrate him. Later on that day, I also did with Ms. Rodia Shed and with Ms. Centeno. We attended with the Carpenters Union and collab with our Gilbert School. We helped, I think, about 90 families. We gave out toys and essentials and food, and that was really amazing to be there and just to help out and just to see the kids taking pictures with Santa. It was really hot. Felt really bad for Santa and Miss Centeno too. She was wearing a sweater and it was really hot, but it was a beautiful day. And just to see the kids smiling and taking pictures and receiving their gifts was amazing. And so thank you to Principal Ms. Ramirez for collaborating with and reaching out to the Carpenters Union, and the Carpenters Union really taking over and providing all this for our families and for our community and for our Gilbert families. That was amazing to be part of. I also do want to say I'm extremely excited, and not just because I'm at Whitaker, but I'm extremely excited about the city collaborating with Whitaker with the new Whitaker Park. It's going to go amazing with our new facelift, which I hope is coming soon. Mr. Montes, that we're working on with our for our school, and it's going to go amazing with our school. And I'm excited with the park. If you haven't seen it, go ahead. You can go on to the city's website and look at the layout and the blueprint, and it's beautiful. And just to be able to be a part of it, that our students can take advantage of it during school hours, and our community can take advantage of it after school hours is amazing. And so it's a really great collaboration that we'll have with the city. So thank you.
Thank you. I was also able to attend CSBA online this year. It was a little bit different. I really appreciated the option to either attend in person or have it online. And so I thought that was great. I was able to shop also for some needy families in our district through the Lions Club grant. And it was just great to spend the money. You get a shopping list, and it was so fun, especially when it's not your money and you're running around grabbing everything. And we were able to even get some extras. I think it was very, very generous of them, and a great thing to do. I also want to thank everyone that came and attended Sam Hamlin's Celebration of Life event. It was a great event. And like everyone said, it was attended well, and the family really appreciated it. And it showed just how much the district, wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we appreciated him. So they were very thankful. I know everyone's kind of busy this last week of school with award ceremonies and holiday shows. So I just want to thank all our staff for putting all that together. I remember just as a child, this being always my favorite week of this whole school year, because it seemed like every day was something fun. So I really want to thank our staff for always making sure that they have that. We did have our report cards last week, and it was our first time having them on Aries. It was pretty, I thought everyone was able to access it easily. It was great. I did notice that a lot of students didn't get comments though this time on their report cards, and I'm just hoping that, in a year where parents weren't allowed on campus or volunteering, sometimes going that extra mile and adding those comments really makes a difference. We are trying to bring in more students to our district, and it's like simple things like this that just prove how much we care. And I just love, that personal touch always. That's it for me. I want to wish everyone happy holidays and a happy new year. So we'll be seeing you in 2022. Thank you.
To Jason, and then after Jason's comment, he will be leaving. After the superintendent comments, Jason will be leaving after this.
Thank you. I'm not leaving like for good, just I have to leave a little early.
Just for
Sorry,
the
just
night.
want to make it clear. Yeah, I've had the pleasure to join or go to the CSBA School Board Association Conference, and it's a great place to kind of see what's going on in the state. And a couple of things that I kind of drew out of that was every session we heard or saw, it was very great to see that we can say confidently, we have an answer for that. So all these people are sharing what innovative ideas they were doing. And then all of us were kind of like, that's cool, but like, we got an answer for that too. We're doing that kind of thing. So it was really good. I realized that, and seeing a lot of different issues out there, just among just what we were going through. I'm very blessed to know that we have a board that is definitely united and unified. We're not uniform, which was great to see. And I think that's our strength. And like our last special session, it was very encouraging because of all the things we're hearing. That was one thing I kept in my mind. The keynote speaker was, one of the speakers was Dr. Victor Rios, great speaker. If you YouTube him, you should check him out. He was just focusing in on about bringing in the relationships and that human connections matter most. And so during these times, that was a very good message to hear. I mean, if you hear his background and what he's gone through into what he is now, it was quite amazing. One thing I got out of him though, I mean, he was talking about deficit versus asset-based outlooks and making sure we have an asset-based instead of at-risk, at-promise students, things like that. And, is it Maslow or Bloom? And he's like, no, it's Mas Bloom. It's both at the same time, things like that. But I whatever great story he had, I felt we have those stories here in our leadership, in our staffs, in our community. And I see a lot of that success. I mean, it's great to see somebody very motivational, but I think if we told our stories here, I bet we would be just as equally motivated and inspired. So I hope we can look at that opportunity to hear other stories, because I think you don't have to be a doctor to be inspiring or a front leader. I think everyone's stories matter, and it gives you some sort of connection and inspiration. So that's one thing I got out of that as well. I was hoping we can hear more of that in our district, because I think we do have a great community, mighty, small but mighty is what we always say, right? So I feel like we have a lot of that there. So anyways, great thing. One other thing I noted that they were saying is the financial outlook for our state looks positive for the next 2 years. However, it's all predicting to a huge cliff in like 3 years. So just, you want to be optimistic, but we got to look at the money, and money matters. And right now it looks like we're able to stabilize for a little bit, but like, winter is coming. So I think we got to be careful. That's what I got out of that. I got to visit the Buena Park Middle School. Thank you to Principal Park for taking us around, superintendent and Ms. Huang. We got to see our partnership with OC Grip, who gave a Chromebook to one of our students there. And it was super cute. I mean, he was like, I never win anything. Like, this is his first time ever winning. So it was quite great to see our partnership at work. And they were very, very complimentary of all the work they're doing in our school. So it was great to see that partnership. Another thing there, I saw that there was ELPD going on with Dr. Flores again, and Miss Centeno was leading that. That was great to see, and just continued development and growth, in our ELs and with our teachers. And then got to see, a concern that one of our PE teachers had. And so I got to address her, and she mentioned that things are better. One thing she did mention was about water fountains, but I think Mr. Park was already over it. So on it already. So that was really good to hear and see that quick response, like it. And then shout out to Miss Earlian, who suggests that I want all their teachers to become Apple teachers. So I just heard that and I was like, that's awesome. Working with our Apple trainers, like I think Miss Ashley over there. So if that happens, man, I think Dr. Miramontes, you gotta like I don't know what we're gonna do for them, but that'd be a great honor if all of them did what they want to do. So maybe we should think about that. And finally, just want to thank Dr. Mirmanis and Ms. McPhillips just for taking care of us through our CSBA and just over the last even couple of years that I've been on the board. I just want to express gratitude in this season of winter and Christmas and our holidays for just your continued work and guidance for our district and taking care of us as board members, and to all my fellow board members. Just it's been great 3 years working with you. And like Ms. Ahmad said, Happy New Year's, Merry Christmas, and all that good stuff until we see you next year. That's my board comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chong? It's great to hear my peers say everything I wanted to say, so I'll keep it short. But last few weeks have been great. The CSBA conference was amazing. I think it was a great professional development day for our board. Having Ms. McPhillips and Dr. Minamontes there. Big shout out to Ms. McPhillips. I know she finished her executive secretary certification, correct? So big shout out to her. They were celebrated out there as well. But just the way that Ms. McPhillips and Dr. Minamontes took care of us at the CSBA conference is always great. I had the opportunity to collaborate and discuss a lot of the common issues a lot of districts are going, across the state, either up north, central, down south. They're all facing the same issues we are, but it was a great way to just kind of hear them out, hear each other out. But at the same time, we were able to come across with speaking about best practices that they're doing in their district. So that was one of my takeaways from there. And at the end of the day, having to sit down with our board and discussing it over dinner to see, what they learned was also, good experience, because we all learned something different. But at the end of the day, we brought it all together and we collaborated and talked about it over dinner and see how we can make our district move along to a better and brighter future. So that was a great experience in itself. I'm also very excited for the grant that the city secured for the park. I think that's going to add a lot of beautification to Whitaker. It's going to add a lot of curb appeal. And I'm really excited for that, because that's been something in the works that they've been working on for months now. So I'm excited to see how that works out, and Whitaker is going to be excited to have that right next to them and enjoy it as much as possible. Also had the opportunity to have a walkthrough with Ms. Castaneda, Superintendent Miramontes, Ms. Cantu, Ms. Centeno over at Pendleton. Thank you, Ms. Leota, for taking the time to walk us through the classrooms. I will say the special ed classes were just probably my favorite. I love the warm up. I have 2 left feet and a bad knee, so I couldn't dance with them. So I tried my best. But it was fun though, seeing their warm up routine, what they go through every morning and how they rotate to their next sessions. It was great. Also seeing the students, 3rd graders with the nonfiction. That was also great. My 3rd grader, she loves nonfiction, so she always hits me with facts, and sometimes I have to, figure out how to catch up to her, because I got to see what she's doing, what she's reading. So to make sure that we have a good conversation about it. But other than that, that concludes my comments, and I'll pass it over to Dr. Minamontes.
Thank you. I'd like to start off with just some personal things. I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Ramirez for her wedding, who's now Mrs. Chavez. And if you hear Mrs. Chavez, no, I didn't replace Mrs. Ramirez. I know it's always confusing when somebody becomes a doctor or you pick up a new last name. So congratulations to you and your level. I'd like to echo what the board mentioned, and thank Jason Chong for his commitment this past year as the board president. Not an easy task, as Irene and Thara know. So thank you, Jason. Your leadership has been much appreciated. I'd also like to thank Jerry Frutos, and I look forward to working with you this next year as well. And of course, Aaron does keep all of us in check. I'm happy to be back. It's nice to be back from CSBA. We had a great opportunity to head out there. It's a lot of work. So it's like herding cats. So that's why Aaron comes. That's not the only reason why Aaron comes along, but it is like herding cats, because then they have 3,000 ideas of what other districts are doing, right? So we're right there, though. I mean, it was nice this last week for the Irvine superintendent to come out, him personally, come out and visit the Buena Park Middle School Wellness Center. We have one at Beatty as well, but he had heard about it from others. So we actually came out, met with Ashley, met with Mr. Park, I sort of sat back, just listened to the conversation. And he was quite impressed with the wellness center there for our students. Love the fact that it was part of the PBS rotation, because he was asking, how do you get everybody in here? Ashley, Rivsdale, who's the counselor, this, it's part of our PBS rotation. It's a cool thing to come through, right? And he's like, that's amazing. I've talked to many people, and to bring it as part of your MTSS system and bring it as part of the PBS piece was brilliant. So he really, it was one of his takeaways from that. So I mentioned, visited Buena Park Middle School, also visited Pendleton School this past week. I was going to mention the Hokey Pokey because I've seen such growth in some of our students that started off at Whitaker. We're now at Pendleton, can follow along every single song to the Hokey Pokey. And, a couple years, we couldn't get them in a classroom. So, or actually not last March, we couldn't get them into a classroom. So huge growth. So thank you. My highlight of the visit though, for both schools, and I love visiting all classrooms, was what Mrs. Andrews was doing with Mrs. Cruz's students. They were actually eating dirt. It really wasn't dirt, but they were learning about the soils, and rock bed and everything else. But it was nice to see our mod severe students included in with gen ed students during horticulture. So thank you to Mrs. Andros, Mrs. Cruz, and your instructional aides that were there. That was awesome. I'd like to thank Mr. Dylan Locke and the choir and the band students from Buena Park Middle School who entertained us last week. What a performance. He stood up in packed house and told our parents 90% of the students up there, and it wasn't just 6 or 7 students, it was 90 students, in the band, and maybe 60 to 70 choir students. But he had stood up in the middle point and said, 3 months ago, less than 90 days ago, actually it wasn't even 90, he said just 3 months ago, 90% of the students had never touched an instrument. And they go up there and play a set. Was pretty amazing. A lot of parents were just real appreciative of what we're doing. And so it was that personal touch that you talked about, Mr. Rios, that you talked about, going that extra step, just thanking the parents. Kids loved it. The kids really absolutely love it. So thank you, Mr. Locke and Mr. Park, for your leadership there. I'd also like to thank Sari Wong for her speech contests. Our kids did amazing this last weekend. I believe a couple of schools finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in their respective groups from Emory, Corey, and Whitaker. So great job. I know it's a wonderful program. Many of our students participated in that. I want to thank the Education Foundation, the Eagles Group, led by Tharwa, and also Principal Linecky for the dedication to Sam Hamblin, a former school board member. I love Sam's stories, and I shared 2 or 3 of them. I don't know if everybody had heard them before. I had heard them, and I actually, I forget who it was. It might have been Michelle, but Sarah came in and asked me, "Where's the Hamlet?" Or was it? I don't. Somebody asked me about the Hamlet. Sarah asked me about his art, his ceramic stuff that I have, an original Hamlet. Truly dedicated guy to our community. So that was, thank you, Tharwa, and thank you, Julie, for your work putting that together. I want to thank our DLAC parents who meet monthly and collaborate with the district. They had their end of the year holiday party. So thank you, Mrs. Centeno, for that. Lastly, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of people here. Dr. Simonowski for his shoes and coat drive. That's a tough thing. I know you work with many different agencies and look for charities that are out there. And so thank you for your work with that. This is a great time of the year for that. It's getting a little bit colder, although it fluctuates all the time, but shoes and coats are much appreciated. I want to thank Aaron McPhillips' staff for the Children's Shopping Street. It's not only the Lions Club, it's many service organizations, the Rotarians, which I'm a part of, also participates in that. And so thank you for those that went out and shopped. I think all 3 of my board members went out shopping. Maybe we'll get a couple of the gentlemen to shop for us next year. Maybe not. I think the 3 are great. And then, and then I also want to thank Mrs. Centeno and Mrs. Ramirez and Mrs. Chavez for the partnership with the Carpenters. I got texts of pictures of what was happening there, just making people happy. And again, I just want to thank our district staff across the district, and I hope that they're able to rest and relax for those that are at home. Got 4 days to go. Let's hold it together for 4 days, and take a nice winter break, and then come back to the new year. Hard to believe 2023. I just saw an episode of Seinfeld this past weekend when they were talking about the millennium, right? When Newman's gonna throw his party in 2020, or 2000. So already
Y2K, yeah.
2023. Amazing. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miramontes. See, they won't take me shopping because I go over budget. That's why he's leaving me out.
That's
I
true.
think, I think you're like a year ahead. You're like a year, you're jumping a whole year ahead.
2022.
2022. Well, that's where my mind has to be, 2-3 years ahead. So that's where we've got to be to keep up with you. No, you did. I remember you purchased things last year and you gave out, like, that was part of the gig, but thank you. Thank you all.
I think our keynote speaker, Dr. Rio, says we can't predict, but we can only project. So we got to project great things into the future, into our district. So thank you, everybody, for all the hard work that you guys are doing, for all the drives. I know it makes me happy to hear everybody collaborating in one way or another. So thank you, everybody. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to action calendar.
Yeah, I'm asking the board for the approval of the 22 calendar year board meeting calendar dates. They're there in there, just asking for approval to move forward with it.
Have a motion.
I'll second.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Cassiano. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So it's 401 with Jason.
Just 4-0.
4-0.
Yep. It's just noted that Mr. Chong has left. So we'll note that in minutes.
So motion passes 4-0. Approval of the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant. It's recommended the governing board approve the BPSC Educator Effectiveness Grant and funding.
Yeah, this is the grant that was presented by Dr. Cantu and staff, prepared for the board. Just asking for the approval so we can move forward with the actions.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Thank you
second.
so much. All in favor?
Aye.
And so passes 4-0. Approval of the 2021-22 single school plan for student achievement. It's recommended that the governing board approve the 2021-2022 single school plan for student achievement for Beatty Middle School, Buena Park Middle School, Corey Elementary, Emory School, Gilbert School, Pendleton, and Whitaker.
I'd like to thank our principals for putting those together and their school site councils. I also want to thank our ed services staff for reviewing those and bringing them forward. I just ask the board to approve them as they are.
I'll motion.
Thanks. I'll second. Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Approval of the 2021-22 first interim budget report. It's recommended that the governing board approve the district 2021-22 first interim report with a positive certification. A positive certification indicates that the district will be able to meet its financial obligation for current and subsequent fiscal 2 fiscal years. Dr. Mullins.
Yes, here to present the report for the first interim is Sandy Poteet, Chief Financial Officer. Ms. Poteet?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Miramontes, and audience members. Tonight, we're going to discuss our first interim financial report. I'd like to thank Neelam Kakar, our Director of Fiscal Services, for all her assistance in preparing this report. Next slide, please. So the budget calendar for this year, our budget is always adopted prior to July 1st. So this is our first opportunity. It's the first interim. It's your first opportunity to have a revisit of the budget. We do this again in March for the second interim. Next slide, please. So what's included in your first interim report is actual expenditures as of October 31st, an update of the current year revenue projections since budget adoption, changes that are in our projected expenditures that reflect our current programs. And then we have our certification of our interim based on our multi-year projection. And as you'll see, we are asking to certify positive that we'll be able to meet our fiscal needs over the next 3 years. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the revenue. Our unrestricted revenue changes, lottery increased by 42,000, not a lot, a small amount, just based on prior year estimates and what actuals are. Local revenues were increased by a total of 185,000. which is a combination of kid connection increases, local revenue increases, and then actually a reduction in our interest earnings just based on the way things are going projected through the year. So it's a net increase of 185,000 to local revenue. And then we have a new concentration funding of 1.3 million. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk about that next new concentration funding a little bit. It is an ongoing increase to the local control funding formula that we've received. In July, in the trailer bill for the budget adoption, there was a change to the amount we're going to receive in the funding formula for our students that are part of our unduplicated count that are above 55%. So we are at 79%. So the difference between 79 and 55. So for 24% of our ADA, we will receive additional dollars at the rate of 65% of the base, which when you get through all that, what it means is we're going to get 1.3 million ongoing beginning this year. Now that amount will go up, will vary from year to year based on our unduplicated count and our ADA, because it is an ADA driven number. But the preliminary numbers for this year are $1.3 million. Now, this new money comes with the caveat that it must be spent on additional staff providing direct services to students. So we have to increase staff at our sites. All of our sites are over 55%, so they all qualify. We won't have to single out one site versus another based on their unduplicated count. So we will be able to provide services across the district. How we're going to use this money and the services that they'll be provided will be discussed in our OCAP update, which is due in February. So we're still finalizing that. These things haven't been decided. But the reason I bring it up here is we do have to recognize it in our revenue projections for the year, but we don't have matching expenditures yet. So this money is going to be set aside in our ending fund balance as one of our assignments. So you will see this additional line there that just says reserve for concentration funding, and it's to hold these dollars until we've come to a determination on what they're being spent on, because we do have regulations on what they have to be spent on, as I said, for the additional staff. So once we decide on what that looks like, we'll be able to incorporate these into the budget. But we do want to recognize the revenue, because when our budget is reviewed, we have to show our calculation to the county office. So we need to recognize that revenue in order for our interim report to be correct. Go on to the next slide, please. So we have our restricted revenue changes. So our federal revenue, some increases, some decreases. Title I has an increase for carryover. Special ed funding has a slight decrease in our Title III. And we have 2.7 increase in various COVID-19 relief programs. But I want to explain and make sure that we're all aware is that most federal programs, you only recognize the expenditure as a relationship to, or the revenue as a relationship to the expenditure. So if you're not, we are getting COVID dollars over the next 3 years, but we don't recognize all of those funds in this year. You only recognize the amount that you're spending. Not all of the programs are that way, but the majority of them are. Each one is unique. They each come with a different set of rules. So I just wanted to share that as we see sometimes revenues going up or revenues going down, we're thinking, oh, did we lose money? We didn't lose money on the grant. We just aren't budgeting to spend it this year. We might be planning to spend it next year. So when we do as we do the interim reports, we have to align the revenue and the expense for each of these grants. So sometimes it shows an increase or decrease, but it's not actually a change in the grant.
Ms. Poti, I just want to add, one of my sessions at CSBA talked a little bit about this. They talked about the money coming in, right? And the amount of plans that people have to do. There was a little district, a one superintendent principal district up in Northern California was just he and his ed services person or business person, two people had 21 plans. 21 plans that they have to write. So I know that our staff is writing every other month. There's a plan that they have to update and bring forward. But it's one of these things that the accountability piece, it's not free money. There's a lot of
Strings attached.
yes, thank you. Strings attached to the pot of money that's there. So Thank you, Mrs. Potteet. Thank you.
Okay, go on to the next slide, please. Additional restricted revenue changes come in the state revenue area. We have 1.3 million of expanded learning opportunity grant. It's actually been reclassified as federal. So the state they originally gave us that grant saying it was going to be funded by the state, and then the state, as they adopted their budget, they in the end decided to use some of their federal funds, and they gave us, I believe it was 5 different federal accounts to split the one count that they gave us for state funding. So in the end, it moved it from federal to state, which again just shows another fluctuation between all of our revenues. We didn't lose anything, it just moved from one area to another. We have an anticipated increase of restricted lottery of 60,000. And then our locally restricted programs, we have an increase from our SELPA for 400,000. And then the Medi-Cal program has been reclassified from a federal program to a local program. So lots of just changes and adjustments from column A to B this year between local, state, and federal. So go on to the next slide, please. So our overall first interim revenue, 73% of our revenue comes from the LCFF, which is just over $48.8 million. We're receiving 9% of our funding from the federal programs this year, 11% from state programs, and 7% from other local programs. So our revenue projections in total for 21-22 are $66.8 million. Next slide, please. We'll go on to expenditures. The unrestricted expenditure changes, we have a net increase of $973,000, which includes site and department carryovers, changes in staffing that can be both increases and decrease. We've had to increase the allocation based on our federal program monitoring for the ELD program materials. So all of those things combined have a net increase of $973,000 in the expenditure category on the unrestricted side. Next slide, please. The restricted side of the budget has a $2.7 million increase, 1.8 coming from temporary expenditures from COVID-19 and learning loss mitigation, special ed program costs, Title I program carryover, and restricted maintenance increase. So one of the things to recall is that our restricted maintenance is a calculation of 3% of your expenditures. However, they have allowed us to exclude some, but not all federal expenses that are one time. So as our total budget increases, what we have to set aside to restricted maintenance automatically increases as well. Next slide, please. So when we look at our total overall expenditures, the district spends 77% of their budget on personnel. 51.8% is spent on personnel, or 51.8 million, I'm sorry, which is 77% of the budget. 20% of the budget is spent on supplies and services, and 3% or 1.7 million is spent on other outgo. So our total expenditures for the first interim are anticipated to be $67.1 million. Go to the next slide, please. The other component of our first interim is our contributions from unrestricted to restricted. As I mentioned earlier, we have the routine restricted maintenance contribution, which is at 1.8 million. On our special ed contribution or maintenance of effort is 6.4 million. So our total contributions are 8.2 million. Next slide, please. So we take our revenues and expenditures and net them together and combine them with our beginning balance, and it leaves us with a total ending fund balance of 11.4 million, 10.2 being on the unrestricted side and 1.2 on the restricted side. Next slide, please. So that ending fund balance is broken down into several categories. Slide. Our unrestricted ending fund balance includes our balances for revolving cash and stores, which are considered non-spendable accounts. Then we have our assignments, which total 8.1 million. We have an assignment for other post-employment benefits, a reserve of 592,000. We have a reserve for Kid Connection of 150,000. We have a technology reserve of 250,000. We have a concentration increase that I mentioned earlier, the 1.3 million. And then our reserve capacity at 5.8 million. And our reserve for economic uncertainties is just over $2 million. So those are the breakdown of our components of ending fund balance. Go to the next slide. So we take the budget, what we've learned for 21-22, what we know and what we have, and we project it out for the next 2 years for 22-23 and 23-24. We look at various factors from our ADA and enrollment numbers to what the COLAs are going to be, what the rates for STRS and PERS and various factors are. And we have projected what we think, where we think will be in the next 2 years. Things to note is that on our LCFF revenue, which is the top line there, we're at 48.8 million. You'll see we dipped to 45 in the middle in the green columns. We go back up to 46.3 in 23-24. That's that cliff we've been talking about. So it's still there. It has not gone away. If you'll notice in our federal revenues, we restricted revenues in the current year are just over 6 million. And you'll see in 22-23, they're all the way up to 9.2. But if you look just below that at your other state revenues, they're currently at 6.5. And then next year, they're going to be almost 4.6. That's where we as the district have taken all of those COVID funds and we projected over 3 years how we're going to spend them. And some things that are starting out that are finalizing and closing in state revenue are being carried forward. The expenditures are then part of the federal programs in the next 2 out years. So that's why there's a change in the revenue, not because it's where we're showing how we're spending that money over the next 2 years, whether it's the state money or the federal money. So we've reflected those adjustments in the multi-year projection. The only real changes in our expenditures are we've only projected for step and column. We've taken out all the carryover of one-time funds that were spent this year. Those are not considered ongoing, so we've removed them in future years. And we have some adjustments for some small staffing adjustments. But we'll be, as we move forward and look at next year's projections, as we get ready to add that 4th year and begin to build next year, we'll be doing a deeper dive into those numbers as well to align those. So as you can see, as we look for our ending balance across the next 3 years, we continue to decline. We have an 11.4 million total ending fund balance in this year. We're down to 9.4 in 22-23, and we dropped to 8.3 in 23-24. So if we go to the next slide, we do a look at that ending fund balance and what the components are. We of course have our required reserve of 3%, and then our assignments across the years. That concentration increase is currently listed as an assignment that's growing each year because it is an ongoing increase. And until, as I said before, until we put those expenditures in, it's going to sit there and it continues to grow. That will of course adjust at the next report as those things are finalized. What that takes us to is what is our reserve of percentage, including all the assignments. Our current ending balance reserve is 15.10. However, if you only look at what you have available to spend that's not earmarked, you have your reserve capacity and you have your 3% reserve. And when you add those two together, we have a 10.6 available balance in 21-22. And 22-23, it drops to 7.84%. And in 23-24, we're just over 5% at 5.08%. So that's where we are on our multi-year projections at this time. Go to our next slide. Our next slide is a summary of the other funds in the district. As you can see, each fund has a positive balance. We will be over the next rest of this year trying to zero out the deferred maintenance fund. We thought we had it zeroed out. There's this pesky little thing of some interest that keeps popping in there we have to get out. But we intend to get that closed. It's down to $12. So we will get that out. But otherwise, this is the results of all the other funds of the district. Next slide. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I'd like to just go back to the reserve summary, just so people could really notice those last few numbers, the 5.08%. And that's that's like not adding, if any changes happen from now until then, more expenses, let's say raises or anything like that, it'll be less than 5%. Correct.
None of that has been incorporated.
Anything added that we come up with, anything unexpected that we have to pay for, it's, it's still gonna make that number even lower.
Correct.
Okay.
Good observation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs. Potteet.
Thank you, Ms. Petit. Well outlined and nicely condensed. So thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nominate aye. Motion passes 4-0. Approval of the classified unprecedented salary schedule. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, we've got a scale here that needs to include, we need to include the middle school guidance specialists. So I'm asking the board to update that table to include middle school guidance specialists. We just currently added.
Thank you, Ms. Shedd.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
And motion passes 4-0. Approval of the revised CSEA classified salary schedule ranges. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, here we have included the student home community liaison. These are the homeless liaisons that we're working under Dr. Simonovsky. So these are ongoing for 3 years. I believe the grants for 3 years. We want to include them in the represented CSCA classified salary schedule.
Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Cynthia. Do I have a second? Thank you, Shedd. All in favor?
Aye.
Nominate aye. Motion passes 4-0. Discussion calendar. Board policy adoption, review, revision, and deletion. Dr. Miramontes.
Yes, I've got Dr. Cantu, who's going to speak about the 5 different policies we're going to bring forward. I want to thank Dr. Simonovsky for her leadership in that revision, working with Dr. Cantu. I'll turn over to Dr. Cantu.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President. Board members. Superintendent Miramontes.
Cabinet members, and our audience. I'd like to present to you with a summary of the board policies that are up for revision. Board Policy 5131.2 bullying. These updates reflect the procedure for investigating complaints, including those associated with school transfers. Board Policy 5144 discipline identifies best practices, training, strategies, and protocols in accordance with Ed Code. Board Policy 5144.1 outlines suspensions, expulsions, due process. It provides updates for grades K through 8th grade for what the grounds of suspensions are in accordance with the law, length of suspensions, due process, and student rights. Board Policy 5145.12, search and seizures, provides updates on appropriate seizure searches as consistent with Ed Code. It also gives guidelines for use of contraband detection dogs. Board Policy 5145.9, hate motivated behavior, provides updates on strategies for a safe, inclusive environment that provides students from discrimination, that protects students from discrimination, harassment, intimidation, and procedures for these complaints related to hate-motivated behavior. Those are the board policies which Ed Services is making the recommendation that board approve.
And we'll bring those forward. This is just a discussion opportunity now. Any questions regarding these board policies?
This is a discussion. I'd like to say, I hope that the increased PD that we're doing in response to the academic and SEL needs of our students will decrease the use of the suspension and
expulsion need
Correct.
for our students.
Correct. I would expect that as well. You know, it, like I mentioned, a neighbor, a district came to visit us and they were talking about some of the issues that they were dealing with as well. CSB, we heard it across the state, right? I think we were all a little, I don't want to say not prepared because we have counselors in Buena Park, we have counselors at school site, but the high number of students need additional assistance. Gen Ed, just Gen Ed students needing additional assistance was quite alarming. And I give credit to our teachers and our principals and our classified staff for working through that. But yes, I would hope that in the near future, as school becomes more normal for everybody, routines become more normal, connections that students have with their teachers becomes more normalized, that we'll start to see that. We've already seen it in many of our school sites when we visit the classrooms. You couldn't tell, you know, like as I mentioned in Mrs. Andrews' class, you couldn't tell who the special needs students were and the regular ed students were in those classrooms. So it's becoming more normalized, but yes, I would agree with what you're saying. Thank you, Dr. Cantu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cantu. That being said, can I get a motion?
Just a discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was getting ahead of myself here. Getting ahead of consent calendar. So onto the consent calendar, unless there's a question or concerning a particular item and ask that it be withdrawn from the consent calendar, the item approval at one time by the governing board. Do I have anything from you, Ms. Discussing it?
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
And nothing from me. Can you get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nominate motion passes 4-0. Major topics, Dr. Miramontes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to January 10th with the governing board redistricting with our attorneys and demographers come out to have a conversation with our board. And then we'll have the early learning program report, talk about this. I mentioned to the board that the possibility of working and running our own preschool program, maybe that we'll have a report how that works. We need about 6 months leeway time. This would be the perfect opportunity to do so. And then we have our first school report on the January 24th, along with the Education Foundation. And then again, a resolution adopting the redistricting of our trustee areas. And then Mrs. Poti will be back here in a month to talk about the audit report. So that's what comes up here in January.
So we're not doing the tours in January?
We were looking at the tours that probably, because of all the construction that's happening in July, that'd be a better month. July, because we'll see everything that's happening across the school sites. Typically, when we come in now, they're already completed projects. We could have that discussion now if the board chooses to go back and do the school tours. We haven't done that. We didn't do it last year, the year before we stopped. It was, I think we had 1 year when we could have done it. We didn't do it. We want to focus more on the instructional programs of visiting the school sites through instruction. The thought was possibly looking at the board tour schools during the summer when all the construction projects are going on. It's your call.
I can see that it says that it's July 11th, that is set date.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I'm
Or-
not here that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just
Because I won't
approved
be
it.
able to that day, just to let you know.
And I'm hoping I'm not. here
That's
that
what I'm
day.
also saying, if it's a set date, because
Well, it's the one, we have one meeting in July.
Yeah.
We can change it later on as we get closer, as people start to plan their vacations. I heard Mrs.
no,
Amat
it's not
saying-
vacation, it's just.
No, but I heard
yeah.
Mrs. Amat
Oh,
says,
but Ms. Amat.
she said she won't be, she's hoping not to be
I'm
here.
hoping not to be here. Yeah.
You
And
always
so,
leave us this summer.
so, but that board school dates, we would look at maybe even the beginning of summer in June or end of June, you know, sometime where we could actually get out and see the construction of what's happening on our school campuses.
Yeah, I think we can bring it up to discussion as we get closer to it to see
Yeah.
what is happening around this. But I would agree, I think I like it better in the summer. Last time we did it during the day, it wasn't as effective because I wasn't able to see much. You know, it was just, we were just being guided along the schools, but I wasn't seeing any transformation And I think during the summer, we can see a lot more.
Okay,
So now we're moving on to closed session, conference with Ramon Miramontes, Superintendent of the Buena Park School District. Labor Relations, Buena Park Teacher Association, Government Conference Code 54957.6. Labor Relations, California School Employee Association, Chapter 569. Government Conference Code 54957.6. Labor Relations, Non-Representative Management and Confidential Contract Employees, Government Code 54957.6. Public Employee Discipline Dismissal Release. Do I have a motion to go into closed session? All in favor? Nominate motion passes 4-0.
6:05.
Call the closed session at 6:05.
Yeah. They don't want to. You gotta take it. Now I know where to, now I know what.
gavel or no?
So you just motion to reconvene.
Can I get a motion to reconvene?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Castaneda. Thank you, Ms. Ahmad. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0. And let the record reflect that there was nothing at a closed session.
6:24.
We reconvene at 6:24. And can get a motion for adjournment.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Michelle. Thank you, Ms. Castaneda. All in favor?
Aye.
Now I'm an aye. Motion passes 4-0
At
at 6:24.